Good morning, folks. Welcome to Coffee with Job on Wednesday, and got a wee clip for you at the end of this, so don't turn it off just when I'm finished, because I think it's quite important. But here's Job's question: he asks a strange question. Why does the Almighty not set times for judgment? Why must those who know him look in vain for such days? Now, it's a strange question because this is the very thing that Job's friends have been saying, although perhaps they've been saying he is judging you. And so some people get very worked up about all this, and they say that this and the following chapters are all mixed up and it's really meant to be Job's friends who are speaking here. And I just think, why? You may not discern a logical pattern, but when you're really emotionally messed up, you're going through a lot of things. Are you always logical? Do you never say things that are contradictory? So I don't see, there's no reason at all to doubt the text here. So let me just continue to read this. There are those who move boundary stones. They pasture flocks they have stolen. They drive away the orphan's donkey and take the widow's ox in pledge. They thrust the needy from the path and force all of the poor of the land into hiding. Like wild donkeys in the desert, the poor go about their labor of foraging food. The wasteland provides food for their children. They gather fodder in the fields and glean in the vineyards of the wicked. Lacking clothes, they spend the night naked. They have nothing to cover themselves in the cold. They are drenched by mountain rains and hug the rocks for lack of shelter. The fatherless child is snatched from the breast. The infant of the poor is seized for a debt. Lacking clothes, they go about naked. They carry the sheaves, but still go hungry. They crush olives among the terraces. They tread the wine presses, yet suffer thirst. The groans of the dying rise from the city, and the souls of the wounded cry out for help. But God charges no one with wrongdoing. Does God care about the poor? It's interesting, isn't it? I hear so much from clergy and from middle-class people going on about the poor, and we care for the poor, and we're passionate for the poor, and we want to be for the refugee. And I do doubt the sincerity of it, because exploitation of the poor still goes on in our culture, in our society. And it goes on in many, many different ways. And the picture that's done here of, for example, carrying the sheaves but still going hungry. You think of the poor making all these goods that we enjoy and still going hungry. We need to be very careful in terms of our consumerism, how we're buying things and what we're doing. The whole picture here is of the poor suffering and being squeezed out of society, and I still think that still happens today. One of the things that bothers me is that COVID has shown is, like a rich country like Australia, I think we've bought enough doses to dose everyone in the population 10 times over. And yet, in countries like Africa, there's very little. And it doesn't matter. The supposed left-wing progressive countries are exactly the same. They do exactly the same. They talk about the poor, but when it comes to the issues, they're looking primarily after themselves. And also, sometimes we don't go in enough depth in thinking about really what would help or what does help the poor. I think something like climate change. We pay the rich farmers subsidies to have wind turbines, and we charge the poor extra for their energy. People talk about climate justice, but for me it's strange that these great crises that we're facing, COVID, climate change, and so on, it's the rich who will benefit the most. It's very interesting in our culture as well, just how many of the rich say, oh, we're for the poor and we're socialists or communists. There's even somebody I follow on Twitter who describes herself as a luxury communist. Well, I guess it is a luxury that the poor can't afford. So when will God act? I mean, that's what he's asking here. And I'm thinking about this as well. I've just seen that the Scottish National Party, or the Scottish Government rather, have just announced they're doubling the child support thing to £20 a month, a week. Now, in one sense, you can say, well, that's a good thing, but I don't think it really helps the poor, because I tell you what's been devastating for the poor is the breakdown in family. And the philosophy of woke progressivism, or progressivism even before it was woke, has done so much damage. £20 is no compensation for not having a mum and dad. £20 is no compensation for the sexual promiscuity being taught and advocated in our schools, the recreational sex. £20 is no compensation for taking away the dignity of the poor. So I do feel a certain upset about all of that. I mentioned yesterday the book God in the Wasteland. Look at verse 5. The wasteland provides food for their children. For many of the poor, it is a wasteland, and the best thing that we can offer is the gospel. And so that's why I'm going to leave you with this wee clip from my son, whom I am very proud of, and I'm not ashamed to say that. And I'm very proud of the work that he's doing in one of the poorest housing estates in Scotland, in Charleston. Watch this and be thankful. Where is God in all of this? Yes, there is coming a day of judgment, but God is still at work, and he's still at work, especially amongst the poor. The poor are not a side effect. I hate it when churches say, well, we'll reach the centres of power first. We'll reach the rich first, and there'll be a trickle-down theory. No, in God's mercy, I hope there'll be a trickle-up theory. But our first priority must be to go to the poor. So I leave you with this. God bless you, and see you tomorrow.
My name's Andy Robertson. I'm a 20 Schemes church planter based here in Charleston in Dundee, Scotland. I grew up in Dundee, I studied in Dundee. I love this city. So I've known of Charleston and the other schemes in Dundee. It's a scheme of round about 4,500 people. Behind me is our church building. We call it the Hub, and we use that throughout the week. We've been planting through a church called St Peter's Free Church here in Dundee. We have leased this building off the council, renovated it, and we use that as the base for the church.
My name's Owen O'Rourke. I'm part of the launch team for Charleston Community Church. I was basically brought up in Charleston. I spent most of my life in Charleston when I was a young lad. It's a good community, and it's quite a warm place and welcoming place. It's all family orientated. We've got uncles and aunts and the grandchildren. They're all around each other in Charleston. One of the big problems in the last, say, 40, 50 years, there's been a lot of deprivation. I think people, I could speak for probably Charleston people, they've maybe heard about Jesus because they're Catholics, but I don't think deeply they've read the Bible. And I think it's so important that, like, for this church here, is basically to let people know about Jesus and tell them the truth about Jesus. Just say, listen, this is real. This Charleston Community Church is here for people to just do that, and that's what we do. But we're not here to force it on people, we're here to just explain it and tell the truth about Jesus.
I'm Tammy, and I come from Charleston originally, but I've moved about after that, but this is where my roots are. We love the church being here. The church has opened its doors to everybody in Charleston, and I think they're liking that. And it's good that they're living in the community because it's making them part of the community. But you're getting the roughest of the guys that are out here coming in here, and that's good. You know what I mean? Because if they could show face in here, then it just shows to the other people that it's not a bad thing to come here. The non-judging of you, I like that about them. They take you on no matter who you are. You know what I mean? No matter what your background is. Because my background's a bit rocky. But they didn't see that, they just see me. And that's good. I love that.
Would you say you're religious?
I'm not completely religious yet, but I'm turning. I vocalise the church wherever I go. I tell everybody about it. It's a good thing.
One of the ways that people can help us is by, first of all, praying for us. The greatest need in Charleston is for these people to respond to the gospel of Jesus. We have thousands of people on our doorstep, and we want them to know Jesus. So please do pray for us. You could also give financially to the work that we're doing here. We would really appreciate that. We have to raise our own funds. And finally, if you wanted to come here and be involved in this ministry, that would be great. If you'd be willing to move to Dundee and to move to Charleston and be involved in this church, that would be fantastic.